In the depths of the cold period, the world held its breath. Superpowers faced each other in a silent standoff, with their most powerful assets hidden beneath the waves. These were the nuclear submarines, city-sized leviathans of steel and secrets, designed to be the ultimate instrument of power, unseen and unheard. Their mission was simple: patrol, wait, and be ready. Every dive was a journey into a tense, isolated world for the crew on board. But what happens when the greatest threat isn't from an external adversary, but from something unexpected brewing within the submarine itself? This is the story of the K-219, a formidable Soviet submarine, and its bizarre, almost unbelievable final voyage. A story where the chain of events leading to disaster begins not with a bang, but with a slow, corrosive process. And it involves a curious detail that sounds like fiction. Potatoes. Yes, you heard that right, potatoes. Prepare to dive deep into one of the strangest incidents in naval history, where a small problem spiraled into a catastrophic failure. The year is 1986. The K-219, a Yankee I-class submarine, slips out of its port for what will be its last patrol. On board, a crew of dedicated sailors, unaware of the ticking clock that has already begun its countdown deep within the vessel's hull. The K-219 was a giant of the deep, over 130 meters long, a submerged fortress armed with 16 ballistic missiles. Each missile was a complex machine, housed in its own silo, running vertically through the body of the submarine. Life inside was a world of its own, a labyrinth of narrow corridors, humming machinery, and the constant low thrum of the reactor. The crew, a tight-knit community, moved with practiced efficiency through the cramped spaces, each man a vital cog in a complex machine. Deep in the Atlantic, the K-219 began its patrol route, a silent predator moving towards the coast of the United States. But a flaw, a tiny imperfection, lay hidden within one of the 16 missile tubes. A seal around a hatch was failing. This wasn't an issue of poor maintenance, but a known, persistent problem with this class of submarine. A calculated risk. As the submarine dove deeper, the immense pressure of the ocean began to test this weakness, pushing relentlessly against the hull. Inside missile silo number 6, a tiny trickle of cold, corrosive seawater began to seep past the faulty seal. This was the beginning. A small leak in a vast machine, but one that would set off a catastrophic chemical chain reaction. The seawater pooled at the bottom of the silo, an unwelcome guest in the most sensitive part of the submarine. The problem was that this water was now mixing with residue from the missile's volatile liquid fuel, nitric acid. A chemical reaction began, slow at first, but steady. The mixture started to produce a corrosive, reddish-brown gas, nitrogen dioxide. This gas was not only toxic, but it also began to eat away at the missile's casing and the internal mechanisms of the silo. Alarms began to sound in the control room. Sensors in Silo 6 were reporting anomalies, pressure, and temperature fluctuations. The crew, initially believing it to be a sensor malfunction, attempted to troubleshoot the issue from the control room, unaware of the real danger. But the chemical reaction was accelerating. The pressure inside the sealed missile tube began to build to a critical level. The situation was far more serious than a simple leak. The submarine was now carrying a volatile, unstable chemical bomb in its heart. So where did the potatoes come in? The smell of the reacting chemicals was acrid and strange, a bizarre odor spreading through the recycled air. In naval lore, the event became associated with the smell of rotting potatoes, a strange, earthy, and foul scent signaling a hidden decay. Suddenly, without further warning, the pressure inside Silo 6 reached its breaking point. The chemical reaction culminated in a violent release of energy. The missile tube hatch, designed to withstand immense external pressure, was blown open from the inside by the force of the chemical event. A toxic cloud of propellant and gas erupted from the silo, instantly filling the surrounding compartments with a deadly, corrosive fog. The entire submarine shuddered from the force of the rupture. Lights flickered, and the deafening roar of the event was followed by blaring alarms. Worse still, the ruptured missile, now exposed to the sea, was ejected from the tube, leaving a gaping hole in the submarine's pressure hull. The Atlantic Ocean began to pour into the vessel through the empty silo, a torrent of freezing water flooding the forward compartments. The K-219 was now critically compromised. It was flooding, filled with toxic gas, and its structural integrity was broken. The initial small leak had escalated into a full-blown catastrophe, threatening to send the nuclear-armed submarine to the bottom of the ocean. For Captain Igor Britanov and his crew, a desperate struggle for survival had just begun, thousands of feet beneath the ocean surface. Their immediate goals: seal the breached compartments, stop the flooding, and somehow bring their crippled Leviathan back to the surface. Chaos reigned, but training took over. Damage control teams suited up in protective gear, plunging into the smoke-filled, flooded compartments. Their first priority was to seal the watertight doors to the breached missile compartment to contain the flooding and the toxic fumes. But the chemical fumes were pervasive, seeping through ventilation systems and causing severe respiratory distress among the crew. Simultaneously, another crisis was unfolding. The flooding was threatening to short-circuit the submarine's electrical systems, plunging them into darkness. In the reactor room, engineers faced their own nightmare, manually shutting down the nuclear reactor to prevent a meltdown. One young sailor, Sergei Preminin, heroically entered the high-radiation area to lower the control rods by hand after the automated systems failed. He succeeded in securing the reactor, preventing a nuclear catastrophe, but the intense heat and pressure trapped him inside the compartment. While some crew members made the ultimate sacrifice, others continued the desperate work of pumping out water and restoring minimal power. Captain Britanoff, facing an impossible situation, made the difficult call. He ordered an emergency ballast blow to surface the submarine. It was a last-ditch effort. If it failed, the K2-19 and its entire crew would be lost to the crushing pressure of the deep. With a groaning shudder, the crippled K2-19 broke the surface of the Atlantic. It emerged under a gray, unforgiving sky. The vessel was listing heavily, a plume of toxic brown smoke still billowing from the ruptured silo area. The crew, gasping for fresh air, scrambled onto the deck, their faces reflecting a mixture of exhaustion, shock, and relief. They had survived the immediate crisis, but they were now adrift in the middle of the ocean on a dying vessel. Captain Britanoff sent out a distress call, alerting Soviet command and any nearby vessels to their dire situation. Soviet merchant ships were dispatched to assist, but they were hours, even days, away. The crew could only wait and watch their submarine slowly sink. Below deck, the flooding continued, the temporary fixes were failing, and the stern of the submarine began to dip lower into the water. The captain faced another terrible choice: abandon the submarine and its sensitive technology, or risk the lives of his remaining crew. As a Soviet freighter finally arrived on the scene, the order was given to evacuate. The crew began transferring to the rescue ship. Captain Britanoff was the last to leave, taking one final look at the vessel that had been his command and was now his tomb. With the crew safely aboard the rescue vessel, a tow line was attached to the K2-19. The hope was to tow it back to a Soviet port. But the submarine was a dead weight, heavy with thousands of tons of seawater. It resisted every attempt to move it. The flooding was relentless. Compartment by compartment, the sea claimed the interior of the once mighty vessel. The angle of its list grew more severe, the deck slipping further and further under the waves. From the deck of the freighter, the former crew of the K2-19 watched in silence as their home prepared for its final dive. Then, the tow line snapped under the immense strain. The submarine was free, and its fate was sealed. Slowly, with a final, weary sigh, the stern of the K2-19 slipped beneath the surface of the Atlantic. The bow rose high into the air for a moment, a final salute, before it too began its journey down. With a great swirl of foam and bubbles, the last of the conning tower vanished, leaving only a disturbed patch of water. The K2-19, with its nuclear reactor and remaining missiles, had sunk to the bottom, over 18,000 feet down. The K2-19 now rests in the Hatteras Abyss, a silent, radioactive monument to a disaster born from a tiny flaw. Its 2 nuclear reactors and 16 ballistic missiles lie with it, a source of concern and study for decades to come. For Captain Britanoff and his surviving crew, their ordeal was not over. They faced intense scrutiny and investigation back in the Soviet Union. Initially charged with negligence, they were eventually cleared, with the blame falling on faulty design and manufacturing of the missile tube. The story of the K2-19 serves as a chilling reminder of the knife's edge on which the world balanced during the Cold Period. It highlights how the greatest dangers of these complex machines were not always external threats, but internal, unforeseen failures. And what of the potatoes? The story persists as a piece of naval folklore, a memorable, if not entirely scientific explanation. It symbolizes the mundane, unexpected origin of a disaster, how something as simple as a leak can lead to a world-threatening event. The heroism of the crew, especially Sergei Preminin, who sacrificed himself to secure the reactor, should never be forgotten. The K2-19 is a ghost of the Cold Period, a testament to both human ingenuity and fallibility, resting forever in the silent dark. Let's look closer at the science. The missile, an R-27, used a hypergolic fuel, meaning its components ignite on contact. The oxidizer was dinitrogen tetroxide, which exists in equilibrium with nitrogen dioxide, the toxic brown gas. When seawater leaked into the silo, it reacted with this oxidizer, creating a highly corrosive mixture including nitric acid. This acid then began to dissolve everything it touched, including the missile's own fuel tanks, accelerating the problem. The potato smell is likely an anecdotal description of the strange, acrid, and earthy odor of these complex chemical reactions. It's a powerful metaphor for something organic and rotten growing in the heart of a sterile, high-tech machine. The pressure buildup was a classic ideal gas law problem. More gas in a fixed volume meant skyrocketing pressure. This ultimately led to the explosive decompression that ruptured the tube, a purely chemical event, not a traditional detonation. So, while potatoes didn't literally sink the sub, the story captures the essence of an unexpected, mundane failure causing catastrophe. It's a testament to how even the most advanced technology is vulnerable to the fundamental laws of chemistry and physics. The story of the K-219 is more than a naval incident. It's a human drama set in a pressurized steel tube. It's about the courage of a crew facing an invisible enemy, a toxic gas born from a simple chemical reaction. It's about the impossible decisions a captain must make when his command, his crew, and potentially the world are at risk. And it is a story made unforgettable by one of the strangest details in military history, the humble potato. A symbol of something rotten, something overlooked that grew into a vessel-ending disaster in the dark. The K-219 incident was a near miss, a catastrophe contained by the bravery of its crew, preventing a far worse outcome. It remains a stark lesson in the fragility of complex systems and the unpredictable nature of failure. From a faulty seal to a corrosive gas, from a pressure spike to a watery grave, a chain of events forged in the deep. So the next time you hear an unbelievable story, remember the K-219, the nuclear submarine brought low by a chemical reaction. A bizarre footnote in history, forever linked to the strange, unforgettable scent of decay, like rotting potatoes.